Hello, and welcome to Introducing Me. I'm your host, Sarah. I started this podcast to get to know other people and lifestyles while discovering more about myself. Each episode, I will give a new guest a chance to discuss their background, culture, interests, or whatever they want to talk about to help increase all of our own worldviews. Today, I would like to introduce you to Arden Coutts. Arden is a trans non-binary author who writes queer romantic suspense novels about finding yourself and love in your 30s and 40s. So Arden is here to talk about that journey, what their life has been like, and I'm excited to hear more about Arden today. So thank you so much, Arden. Why don't you go ahead and tell the audience more about yourself?
Hi, Sarah, and thank you so much for having me on the podcast today. I'm very excited to be here. I am Arden Coutts, and I'm a self-published indie author. So I have currently published three novels, a novella, and a book of poetry. All of them really kind of focus on the queer experience, I would say, in some way. But a little bit more about me before I guess I dive into the books. I grew up in rural Nebraska, like middle of nowhere, more cows than people type place, and was lucky enough to have one of my parents was a very avid reader. My mother read a lot. It was, I think, probably her favorite thing to do. And so I grew up reading. I would essentially get dropped off at the library and would just spend all of my time there, getting lost in different worlds. And I think that really is what made me want to be a writer, was that ability to kind of transport myself to other places. Became really important when I was younger, and as I guess throughout my adulthood too, honestly, when it comes to like dealing with mental health and kind of um, handling and processing difficult things in life. I find that writing has been a great tool to do that. So um, that's a little bit about where I grew up. I'm actually an archaeologist by trade. So I used to travel the country and would get on projects, digging holes, spend a little bit of time in the Mississippi backcountry and the swamps digging holes for about 4 years. And that whole experience also had a massive impact on my mental health, which led me to write more. So kind of that combination of mental health and life experiences has really influenced my writing. As you mentioned, I am trans non-binary, and I like to use my own experiences in my writing to really enhance my work. So I put a lot of myself into my books and a lot of my experiences, and I hope that the hope is that people who are reading them will also feel like their stories are being told, and that they're being represented through my work. So that's what I hope people get from my work.
Yeah, so writing came from this place of, figuring out, how to work with mental health and the job and everything sort of there, and you're putting yourself into your books. So what has your personal experience been like with your identity?
Mm, Great question. Yeah, it's been quite the journey. I grew up knowing that I was different, but I didn't know how. And I grew up in a time, not to make myself sound super old, but I grew up in a time where mental health wasn't really um, a conversation, and even and gender and sexuality were even less so. There were no conversations around it, and I didn't have the language to describe myself then. And so for me, 8 years old. I was massively depressed. Um, didn't want to be around anymore. Was just a very sad individual because I just had this feeling of being so different and lost and just not belonging. And I started writing poetry around that same time because it was the only way for me to really get out what I was feeling. And it wasn't until, gosh, I think college or right before college that I was like, yeah, I think I'm bi, and and that didn't go over well with my parents. Um, and then kind of sat on that for a while, and then I was like, yeah, I think I might be pan. And I was like, well, I think I might just be into girls. Well, and I kept like evolving, which I think is kind of a common theme for folks in the community. And it wasn't until my 30s, early 30s, where I had this really, really rough year of ending a relationship of 4.5 years. My dog died. I started a new job, and I just had a full mental meltdown and went to therapy for the first time at like 32, I think. And I remember having this conversation with my therapist, and she was like, I think like therapy might not be enough, or like you're still very sad. Like, what's going on? Like, we're not making improvements here. And I had been holding this in because I was too afraid to say it, but I was like, I think I'm in the wrong body. Like, I don't think that this is who I'm supposed to be. I don't feel like this is my body. And the knowledge, like knowing that I will never be in the body I want, is like soul crushing. That's where all this like heavy, heavy sadness was coming from, was just knowing I was never going to be who I wanted to be. But just having that conversation and saying it out loud opened everything up. Like, it was truly amazing. Like, everything started changing. I got top surgery, which is essentially a double mastectomy. And then I was like, oh my God, like I can be proactive and take steps to becoming the person I want to be, inside and outside. And since then, my mental health has improved drastically. Like, huge. I can't even like, honestly, I don't have the vocabulary to explain like the just pure joy that, no, like, making these small changes and being able to talk about it out loud have made in my life.
Yes, I mean, it's so great to hear, it took some therapy. It took some time to talk it out.
Yeah.
But being able to kind of turn around from depressive episodes to being able to be like, no, like I'm now able to have my body be like where I want to be who I am. When you were first, trying to figure out your sexuality, you mentioned that that didn't go over well with your parents. So do you have a support system now that you are able to be more of who you want to be?
Yeah, I'm still definitely like building that support system outside of my family. And I'm lucky I have supportive siblings, and like my mother is trying now, which I appreciate. I'm like, I can see that you're making efforts to understand and to be supportive. And that's really all I can ask for. So that's good. She's come around after like it's been 15, 20 years since that first conversation. um, but I have some really close, extremely supportive friends that I have leaned on heavily throughout, I would say, the last 10 years that have just been so supportive and understanding, and have come with me to get my top surgery done because I didn't have anyone else to go with, and have let me live with them as I quit my jobs and start my own businesses. So like they're really supportive and have been there for me. And yeah, it's really wonderful to have those types of people in your life.
Yeah, and I'm sure that, having grown up in rural Nebraska, wasn't necessarily the most inclusive place you could have grown up in.
Yeah, absolutely not. It was, uh, if you were not quote unquote quote normal, you were on the outside, and that was not a place you wanted to be. And that included, I mean, if you were a goth or anything other than what the main crowd, I guess, saw as normal. It could be really brutal.
Yeah. So then, you've had this support from your friends as you've transitioned in life with who you are, with your work. What kind of happened that you were doing poetry at 8 years old and now you're writing again, but you also by trade are an archaeologist. So can you take us a little through that like professional journey of yours?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's kind of a wild ride. um, I also knew from a really young age that I wanted to be an archaeologist. I loved being outside. Had a huge rock collection as a child, and my mom made me like a little pouch to put on my belt. So when I was just walking outside, I could collect things as I was going. So like it has always been something I think that I wanted to do. And so I went to school, got a degree in anthropology, became an archaeologist. And really, I didn't really write during that time from kind of high school to senior year in college. There was a lull in writing. I think I was just too busy, and I was happier in those times. And I have a tendency to really dive into my writing when I'm kind of a little down. But I'm going to backtrack a little bit to when I was in college. My father passed away in 2007, and I started writing a story after he passed. And at the time, it was called Giving Up the Ghost. And it's a post apocalyptic horror story about kind of humanity falling apart and how you deal with grief and, um, you know, what is humanity in the time of chaos and destruction. And looking back, I think that was kind of my way of trying to process everything that I was going through. And like the death of a parent at, an early age is, at any age really, is just like a surreal event. And so I think it was how I was processing it. And I worked on that. I'm still working on that story all these years later. One day I think I might release it, but it's one of those that's like very close to me. So I don't know if I will, but maybe. But when I got out of school, I immediately moved to Washington State, got my first archaeology job, kind of worked on Giving Up the Ghost a little bit every now and then, but was really just focused on work. And did a little bit of archaeology throughout the states. And then I ended up in Mississippi working for FEMA, doing Hurricane Katrina recovery. And we were one of the first archaeology teams that FEMA ever had. And it was a tough, uh, it was a mentally difficult position. I definitely feel like FEMA broke my will to live a little bit, which might be a little dramatic, but Um, I think it was because it was my first office job mixed with archaeology, and it was a really unique situation, but it really broke down my sense of self and kind of it like broke me mentally is really the only way I know how to describe it. But I stayed with that position, had many different positions within FEMA, ended up in Washington DC, like climbed the ladder up to the big offices, and I had a full mental breakdown. I was doing disaster recovery at that time. So I was deployed to disasters like 9 months out of the year, no breaks. Like, it was hard. And my doctor prescribed me a month and a half off from work because I was just so mentally broken, and I was super depressed, in a terrible place mentally. And that was when I started therapy. And so I took that month and a half and I said, okay, I'm going to start therapy. I'm going to look for a new job. I'm going to quit my old job, and I'm going to start doing things I've always wanted to do. And so I started my podcast back then, the Fun with Friends podcast. And it was all about what happens when you stop overthinking and you just start doing. And it was all, yeah, just me kind of working through my bucket list with my friends. And on my bucket list was to publish a book. And so I started working on Giving Up the Ghost Again, which is now called Echoes of Us, and really started to focus in again on like the creativity that I had. Essentially, I shelved it for 5, 6 years. And then I was like, okay, now is the time for me to like get back into that and like get that creativity back and find my happiness. And I did all those things. I left FEMA. I got a job as a contractor, paid off my student loan debt, quit that job, moved to North Carolina to move in with my best friend and her husband, um, so I could start my own job or my own business, and then started writing again. And that was around the time that I published my first book.
So, in this story, you kind of mentioned how you wanted to find things you enjoyed again, which obviously like has come through with writing and publishing, but also you knew that you wanted to be an archaeologist when you were young. So do you have that desire to go back to any of that like more boots on the ground digging and not the disaster recovery office job portion that you ended up in?
Yes and no. I definitely miss archaeology. I miss being outside, the camaraderie that comes with the team that you're like living with these people, you're digging with them every day. Like you really have like a tight knit family by the end of these digs. And I do miss that, but physically, I don't know if I could do it anymore. I've got arthritis in all my joints. Like I'm getting a little too old, I think, to go do it. But I do miss it. I do miss the excitement of being on digs quite a bit. But luckily, a lot of states have volunteer digs that you can volunteer for. So I've done a couple of those in places that I've lived. So I still get in there a little bit every now and then.
Sounds like that might be the right dose for you where you are currently in life.
Absolutely.
So, what was it like getting that first book published? And you've now published additional works since then. So, what has the publishing experience been like and writing these other pieces? Because even the first book you've talked about is still one that's close to heart that may or may not be ever published.
Yeah, I never thought I would actually publish a book. Um, I knew again, like kind of as a kid, I wanted to get my work out there some way. Like I used to write my favorite author, like the what were they called? Like not the Pony Club, but the there were books about horse riders, and I was obsessed with them. And so I would write the author and send her my poetry, and I was like, "Can you help me get this published somehow?" And so they would write back to me and send me like little information for like publishers for kids poetry and stuff like that. So um, I had published a few poems leading up to um, Fall into Midnight, which came out last year in 2023. Um, but I don't know, I guess I just never really thought it was possible for me to publish a novel. And then I just kept, hearing and seeing things about self-publishing, and then Amazon really started pushing that you could self-publish on their platform and to make it easy. And I was like, okay, I think I can maybe do this. Like, I think I can figure this out. But I did get like a book coach that helped me with my first book to understand how to, find my audience, how to market my book, how to format it correctly so that Amazon will take it, and how to um, use Ingram Sparks to distribute the book to booksellers. Like there's a lot that goes into publishing and being a self-published indie author that I don't think a lot of people know about until they start researching, and then they're like, holy crap. Like there are a lot of steps. You have to, find an editor that likes the type of stuff that you write, that is knowledgeable in the genre that you're writing, that is also a good editor. You got to think about cover art. You've got to think about how many times are you going to send it to the editor. You've got different types of editing. So there's like a lot of little bits and pieces that go into it. But Fall into Midnight just kind of happened. It was an idea that I had that started off as a gender fluid bouncer, gray, and an ER doctor that met at a nightclub. And the scene I kept seeing in my mind was them on the dance floor kind of having this moment under a disco ball with like people just like dancing around them. And I just kept seeing that over and over again. And I was like, I have to write this story. Like it's sticking with me. I can't stop thinking about it. Like I want to know more about these people. So this has to become a book. And I took part in something called NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month that happens every November. And I did that, wrote Fall into Midnight in 1 month. And it was about 50,000 words. And I was like, okay, I have a book. Now what? And it sat for a while until I figured out the next steps. And then it was off to the races. Like it was insane how quickly it happened once I got a book coach and figured out what the steps were. And Fall into Midnight was October 2023. The second book in the series, Fall into Me, was June 2024. And now the third book is coming out in November of this year. So once I got the hang of everything and got the steps down, I was really able to apply it to like future works. So
And is this going to be a trilogy, or are there, in theory, more books to come after the one that's going to be released soon?
ooh, well, I think this will remain the Fall trilogy. There is a prequel, and there is a holiday novella that is a standalone but features these characters, that is coming out in December 6th. Um, but I've written them in a way where there's the potential for offshoot stories with a couple of other characters. So I've set it up where I think I can do two more books.
And so are you currently in the throes of a new novel, or do you still kind of have this original novel you started with and you're focusing on the publishing of these two upcoming pieces?
I'm kind of all over the place. I'm working on, I just started a Patreon, and part of that is sharing the pieces of Echoes of Us that I have finished. So I'm releasing chapters every other week on the Patreon, and it is a work in progress because I have to do massive rewrites for Echoes of Us. So I'm kind of writing it and posting it as I go, which is kind of cool because then I get instant feedback from patrons, and that feedback is going to help shape the book as it goes forward. So essentially, if you're in there, you're helping me write the book, which is, I think, kind of a fun experience. And then I'm doing a writing challenge this November, where I'm trying to write 10 short stories in the month of November. So each short story will be about 5,000 words. And they're short horror stories because I also love everything related to scary stories and like scary movies. A huge fan. So I was like, I'm going to try my hand at writing a little more like traditional kind of horror stories. And each one is going to be focused on or around a holiday. So I'm currently working on one called Feasting, which is a Thanksgiving themed horror story. That'll come out in November. And these are also being released on the Patreon. But at the end, after they've all been released, which will be like maybe May of next year, I will publish a book of all the short stories, which I think I'm tentatively calling holiday horror. Very creative. So I'm working on a little bit of everything right now.
Yeah, this definitely sounds like a little bit of everything. And you mentioned early on how, you put some of yourself and your personal experiences into your stories. So how does that kind of like shape up for you when you are, say, like pulling from real life or pulling from this idea? How do those things weave into your writing?
Oh, great question. Absolutely great question. So I used writing a lot to explore my own gender and sexual orientation journey. And when it comes to my writing, I, let's see if I can explain this. I put a lot of my own experiences in there, my own memories. And the characters are really kind of different snapshots of myself. So in Fall into Midnight, Gray is this very confident, gender fluid, she they bouncer, but they have a lot of trauma and they're a little weary when it comes to love, and that's very much a part of who I am. And they've also experienced um, their parents not being accepting of their relationships. And there's a memory that I included in Fall into Midnight where Gray is sitting in the backseat of the car with Hannah, and they're kind of like secretly holding hands. And that was something that I experienced as a kid, like secretly holding hands with one of, my friends that was also a girl. Like, so I put a lot of my own, um, it, I keep saying experiences, but yeah, like memories and pieces of myself into that, into my work. And very, very much so into Fall into Midnight. And Fall into Me was really a look at different types of partnerships that exist, especially platonic partnerships. And that's kind of a running theme through all of the books, because I think that those types of relationships are often misunderstood. That you can have these really deep, really intimate platonic relationships with people. And I wanted to kind of showcase that as well, because those types of relationships are extremely important to me and in my life, and are often the types of relationships that I have with others. So I wanted to show that partnership can be intimate, platonic, just coworkers, like along those lines. And Fallen to Me really focused on that. And then We All Fall focused heavily on recovering from trauma. So if you look at the time, I guess the timeline of the three books, it's really like my childhood to early 20s, Fall into Midnight, 20s to early 30s, Fall into Me, and then We All Fall is really like when I started therapy to where I am now. And a lot of the conversations in We All Fall, which is the one that's coming out in November, a lot of those conversations are conversations I wish people would have had with me when I was having a hard time, and were things that I needed to hear as well. So I've kind of put those all into that last book.
Yeah, I think it kind of makes sense how, you've gone on this journey with writing, you've gone on this journey with the characters in your book to be able to really showcase those different experiences and make sure you're pulling on realities. And even when you mentioned kind of the nitty-gritty of publishing, like making sure you even have an editor that knows some of these topics and isn't going to be like, oh, well, that's not realistic, when no, like it's an experience you've actually experienced,
Yes.
just written a little bit differently.
Yeah. Finding a good editor is that's I love my editor. She's amazing. But that's usually a piece of advice I always give, like, because self-publishing is extremely expensive. It can be. And my if you're looking to self-publish and you're on a budget, the one thing I would say to spend the most money on would be a really good editor, because it will make all the difference in your writing.
And when you talked about writing and kind of when you found yourself writing more, whether it's through NaNoWriMo, like you're kind of giving yourself this challenge upcoming to write these horror stories. But you also mentioned how you find that you tend to lean on writing more in moments of strife or depression or grief. But at the same time, your identity has started to change and you are in a better place. So how do you foresee kind of going forward? Might you struggle with writing when you're happier in day-to-day life?
Yes. This is a worry that I actually brought up to my therapist when I started to feel better and then got medicated. I was like, oh my gosh, what if I can't tap into my creativity anymore? Like, what if I was only creative because I was sad? Or what if my medication makes me into a different person? Like, what if the person I was when I was sad was not who I actually am? Like, I had this whole like identity crisis kind of going into therapy and coming out with medications and stuff. And but I actually think it's helped me quite a bit, because I can still tap into those feelings and those memories, but I'm have motivation now, which did not I was definitely lacking. I'm able to concentrate better. I'm able to like really sit down and be like, okay, this is the plan. These are the things I need to do. Like, but it was definitely a big concern for me. And I have found a way, um, like I really tap into music and lyrics a lot. And so if I need to kind of go to like a sadder place, I will, I like to build playlists for each of my books. And so if I need the vibe to be a little sad, I will build a sad playlist and I'll just listen to that music until I'm like feeling a little like in my feels, I guess, and then I will use that to kind of transport me to the moment in the book. So I rely on music pretty heavily.
That's really interesting and fun, I think, to be able to say, like, oh, here's this playlist connected to this book to get like in those feelings and vibes. On
Mhm.
a day to day, though, what kind of music do you enjoy?
Oh no. Another one where I'm kind of all over the place. I love K-pop. Huge K-pop fan. I also really love like Korean R&B or like yeah, kind of just like slow pop maybe. I don't quite know how to describe it, but it's fantastic. But I'm also a sucker for, like Sabrina Carpenter right now. I'm really into her music and um of course Chappell Roan. I'm super, super deep down into her music as well right now. So I'm kind of all over the place.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with, seeing what the sound waves give you and finding new interests. When you create these playlists to kind of get the vibe of your book, do you kind of start with these genres and artists that you're interested in, or do you sometimes maybe like seek out, oh, I want maybe songs about this, or what are other people thinking about when they want to get in this sort of vibe and feeling?
Yeah, I usually start with songs I already know will make me like sad. Um, which sounds so weird to say. Like, yeah, I need to be sad, so I'm gonna listen to some music. But and then I kind of let Spotify kind of help me find other music, or I'll hear something on Instagram or TikTok that really just like hits me, and I'm like, oh, I have to find out what this song is. And I get a lot of my music off of reels and TikToks, which is kind of sad, but that's what I'm digging into right now. But yeah, Spotify helps me out quite a bit when it comes to finding music that mixes well with what I already have on there.
Well, I think that social media is a big way of where artists are pushing their music, where they're getting to be top charting and, really putting themselves out there, which I'm guessing is something that as a self-published author, you also have to dive into the world of social media.
Oh yes. Oh yes. It is um my life. um, I am on social media way too much, but when you're a self-published author, I mean, you are taking on all aspects of writing a book. You're writing it, you're publishing it, you're marketing it, you're selling it. Like you're really doing every aspect of it. And I don't know if someone has cracked the code on marketing books, please get in touch with me because I still have not figured it out. Um, and it's an I don't want to say it's an issue, but I've spoken with a lot of traditionally published authors as well who have the same problem. Because a lot of the times publishers don't actually market their books for them. Like they're fully responsible and have to do that for themselves, and we're struggling. It is a challenge, but I I do love social media. Like I said, I'm on there way too much, but it's another opportunity to be creative. And I get a lot of joy out of just sitting down on like a Sunday, getting into Canva and just making posts for the month. Like that is, it's almost like meditation for me because I can almost shut my brain off and just make pretty things. And so I really enjoy it.
Well, it's good that you're able to enjoy it. And because it is such a necessity for being self-published, and even sounding like even if you're not self-published, needing to do that legwork to find the audience and get people reading the books that you're putting out there.
Absolutely.
Now, before I start to wrap things up, is there anything else you would like to share with the listeners? Kind of an open slate for you and your journey.
Ooh, I would love to just kind of say that I want to use my writing as kind of a launching point to build a community around queer issues and identities. And I'm really looking to kind of fill that gap in the industry for people who realize their sexuality and gender kind of later in life, and want people to realize that they can still find happiness and love even as they're kind of figuring out who they are. That's really what I hope to do with my writing. And if folks would like to be a part of my community, they can definitely find me everywhere. I'm on every social media platform pretty much, I think. And it's just my name in most places. So Arden Coutts, ARDEN COUTTS. And I also have a YouTube, which is Wandering Creative Life, where I kind of get more into life as a multi-passionate creative. So yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, I think it's fun to hear how, kind of like this noble purpose behind your authoring, wanting to create this sense of community, and also, just putting yourself out there in different ways. It's just so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I can't stress the importance of community in whatever form it takes. So it's so important.
Definitely. Now, at the end of all my episodes, I do ask my guests a random question. So my question for you today is, what is your ideal honeymoon location?
Ooh, ideal honeymoon. Um, I'm gonna give two because I don't think I can choose. The first would be to go back to the island of Kauai because it was glorious, and it's got the, what is it, the National Tropical Botanical Garden of Hawaii, I think, is on Kauai. And there's Limahuli Gardens, which is also beautiful. There's just so many beautiful places, and you can go around the entire island in like one day. And yeah, it's fantastic. I would love to go back one day and visit again. And then the second location would have to be anywhere in Scotland because I love Scotland.
All right, that brings this episode to a close. So, of course, if you would like to connect with Arden, their website and Instagram will be in the description. So, feel free to connect with them as their upcoming book is about to be released, and, just see what they've got going on in the future and all of the good things that they will be publishing. Of course, if you'd like to connect with the podcast, our website is in the description as well. It brings you to all of our past episodes, resources, social media from previous guests. And of course, it brings you to our social media. We are on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn if you'd like to go follow those pages. There's also a link in the description to support the podcast monetarily if you're interested in doing that. And my email is in the description if you would like to be a guest on the show or just connect with me. So thank you so much, Arden, for spending time with me today, and to my listeners for taking the time out of your day to hear a new story. Until next time, bye.
Bye.